Hello, 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 ladies. This podcast is designed exclusively for you. This is Her Talk Show, where we dive into inspiring thoughts, ideas, and stories, all with one purpose to empower and uplift women like you. I am Sabrina Victoria, your host and guide on this journey of self discovery and growth. I invite you to hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. Together, we are creating a vibrant community of empowered women. Get ready to unleash your brilliance. Her Talk Show starts now.
We come to you every day with the best speakers, relationship coaches, spiritual mentors, trailblazers, business owners, authors, young hustlers, podcasters, entrepreneurs, fitness trainers, therapists, financial advisors, and more. We ask our guests one question. What do you know that I don't know? Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
Joining us today for this episode of Her Talk Show. We have had over 500 women grace this stage, and we are adding another one to the list today. If you're listening live, welcome. And if you're listening on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay so we can send you some love in the comments. Either way, if you are watching this, please share this video so we can get more eyes and more ears on the awesome content that we are about to share today. So today we're talking to an amazing woman, Irene. She is a holistic therapist and coach that helps people release past trauma and choose healthy habits in the now so they can build the future of their dreams. With a unique blend of psychotherapy, nutrition, yoga, tantra, ayurveda, shamanism, and much more, she can help you achieve the life you know you deserve. Welcome, Irene.
Hello, Sabrina Victoria. Hello, everybody who's watching. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really happy. I love to be part of this vibrant community. It's such a pleasure. Every time I open Facebook, there are some updates from the group, and it's always such uplifting and interesting, useful content. Because if there's something I've learned in life, and it keeps being proven again and again and again, is that we're here to thrive, but to share that, right? Because we're social beings, we exist in connection. So anybody thriving is my thriving, and vice versa. We're here to help each other, basically. So what you are doing, Sabrina Victoria, is amazing. You're connecting so many people over that premise. So really, thank you for that. I'm happy to be a part of that.
Yes. Thank you so much for acknowledging that. I appreciate it. So you are bringing a wonderful topic to us today around the conversation of spirituality and how important it is for us to make our life an adventure.
Exactly. For me, spirituality is something very practical. It's not a woo-woo concept. It's something that's being more and more proven by modern science and research, and also something that affects and impacts how we live everyday life, right? Things like meditation, mindful practices are being demonstrated to have a lot of benefits for physical health, mental health, and there are spiritual practices that ancient spiritual traditions of the world, such as Buddhism, Tantra, yoga, were advocating for millennia before now. Modern neuroscience comes and tell us it's good for us. Same as with a conscious, mindful diet, conscious, mindful relationships. Spirituality really is about embodying that awareness, those conscious, mindful choices on the daily 24/7, because how you do one thing is how you do everything, right?
Yeah, 100%. When you say spirituality and the word practical in the same sentence, I don't think most people are used to that.
I know. And that's because for centuries, if not millennia, we have understood spirituality as something separate from science or from daily life, because, well, organized religions have separated spiritual life from the daily, from the mundane, so to say. But if you look at indigenous people, if you look at shamanism, if you look at earth-based spirituality, we were like that at some point in evolution, right? We all were living in communion with nature at some point, and celebrating the seasons, celebrating natural phenomena, celebrating rites of passage of our different comings of age as people, right? Having a more tribalistic, ritualistic lifestyle. So that's part of our DNA. That's part of being human. And that's something that in modern society we've sort of forgotten. But those are very practical ways of embodying spirituality in our day-to-day life, through rituals, through celebration, through connection to nature.
Yeah, that's very interesting to think of it that way, as far as what is the definition of spirituality. Like if you think of any word, like most words, like I remember I was watching this TikTok not too long ago where this woman takes words, like for instance, in the English language, that are the same exact word, but they mean different things. And she was talking about the word tender, like to be tender, or to be a tender, or to eat a chicken tender, or that chicken is tender. And she started to use like the word tender, for instance, like 12 different times in one sentence. Like, I am a tender who tends chickens to make chicken tenders that are tender. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about this word of spirituality, you know, I think most individuals in North America, at least, connect spirituality to Christian. And then those that maybe aren't Christian would then take it to a woo-woo spirituality of universe spiritual. But then you're almost taking it a step further, and you're saying spiritual is just like part of being human.
Exactly. That's my take on it. And I came originally from Spain. I was raised a Christian there. Then I lived in a bunch of different countries. And most recently, I spent a couple of years living in Latin America and going deep into indigenous culture, into shamanism. And so this sort of earth-based spirituality that, as I was saying, we all have in our DNA, because historically or in prehistory, we were all living like that at some point, right? Adoring forces of nature and so on. So what happened with Christianism, the Judeo-Christian culture that's so prevalent nowadays in our worldview as Western countries, developed countries, is that these religions sort of monopolized spirituality and removed it from the daily, because whoever was adoring forces of nature, or I don't know, dialoguing with spirits of nature, or making potions with herbs, was a witch, was burnt at the stake.
Yeah.
So this is also about a reclamation of our sacred rights to commune to nature and to relate to it in a way that's magical, that's witchy, that's also linked to this archetype of the divine feminine, of the witch, that's been suppressed for centuries. And as women, I think it's really helpful and healthy that we can reclaim that.
When you're talking, I'm almost thinking of like the scene in Pocahontas where she's in her feminine, beautiful, and she's like speaking into the forest in a spiritual way, with like the blue lights kind of like flowing through the forest, and her being one with nature.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I moved to Latin America a couple of years ago, and I spent a year living in the jungle in Brazil, mainly in an eco village. And it was a really transformational experience because it went from having watched Pocahontas and wanting to feel like that as a child, because so many of us have that as children, right? We speak to animals, we speak to forces of nature, we speak to even spirits. Like children live in this fantasy world where everything is possible, and then as teenagers and adults, we're sometimes even indoctrinated into forgetting that, forced to be practical, forced to just, have a proper job and make a living and go into the hustle culture and forget that, which is something that actually makes us happy. That connection with nature, with the spirits in nature, right? And you were speaking about words. And before I became a therapist, I actually did research. I have a doctorate in linguistics and translation, and part of it was studying meaning of words. And I love that, speaking about wordplay and etymologies. And the etymology of the word spirit is related to breath. So it's like the breath of life that breathes life into everything that exists. So again, through the last centuries of modern Western culture and philosophy, philosophers theorized that matter was separated from spirit, and that went hand in hand with religion because it was convenient, right, for religious purposes to tell people, you live in the world of matter, worry about the matter, working to earn your bread, and we will worry about the spirits and religions and God, and we will tell you what God wants from you, which is to obey mainly, right? So religion was also used as an instrument for social domination, whereas in earth-based spirituality, shamanism, indigenous people, most like the basic understanding is normally that each person has a direct link to God, whatever you understand God to be, the universe, nature, and so there's no stark distinction between spirit and matter. It's all more connected.
When did you start getting into this? How many years have you been practicing spirituality?
So it's funny because I used to be a very materialistic and a skeptical person. As I was telling you, I was a researcher. I took my doctorate. It was very rational. I taught in university even for a while. And that career of mine that was highly demanding took a big toll on my physical and mostly mental health. So in 2018, I started practicing yoga as a way to relax, basically. I just enjoyed the exercise and it made me feel relaxed at the end. So I started doing yoga daily. I really liked it. I found this form of yoga called Ashtanga yoga, which is pretty physical, athletic, like active. I always used to think before that yoga was slow and boring, but
Yeah.
this one made you sweaty. So I enjoyed it and I kept it. And a couple of years into that, I figured I didn't want that rational, materialistic career anymore because it was very stressful. It didn't really make me happy. So I went to India, I studied yoga there, and I made plans to change my career from academic researcher into yoga teacher. And seeing yoga really as this very practical, holistic, therapeutical tool for the daily life. Not only the physical exercise, but also the meditation and the energetic aspects of it. Then the pandemic hit. So I was stuck. I was living in Italy at the time, and it was pretty tough, the pandemic there. We had pretty tough restrictions, and it was a huge inconvenience for me that triggered an existential crisis, a really deep crisis. So that pushed me to really research spirituality, not only from a theoretical point of view of like, what do the yoga texts say? What does Buddhism say? But in a very practical manner, like, how can I use these tools to really make myself feel better? Because I feel like shit. Like, I had a career and then I found my dream like vocation of teaching yoga and using it as therapy and helping people live more connected, better lives. And then all of a sudden we're in lockdown. I don't even know when I can leave my house. I was stuck for a year and a half with a ticket to India that I never got to use. In the end, I ended up going to Latin America, which was better. But anyhow, at the moment, it was really hard for me. So that's why and how I went all in. You know, I researched as much as I could. I did as many trainings as I could, first online and then in person. I even got another master degree in holistic psychology, which is this integrative view of psychology that includes not only traditional clinical psychology, so to say, but also meditation and spirituality and herbalism, different tools.
Wow. What an extensive story. And now you are where you are.
I am where I am, and the best is yet to come.
Yes, yes. You know, I know that you talk a bunch about spirituality, connection, and how this means that we're never alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love for you to talk about this a little bit because I think that especially in this age of depression, I think that there is a lot of feelings of being alone
Mm-hmm.
in two ways. One, I'm in the sense of depression and I don't want to be with anybody alone. And then also, I am depressed because I am alone.
Yeah.
What is your viewpoint as far as how we can use connection, um, gather spirituality, nature in order to kind of close that gap a little bit
Yes.
with universe and humans?
Yes. That's a great question, and it's great that you separate it like that because, well, it's not so different, but it's true that we are social beings, right? So we need connection to other humans, but we also need connection to nature, and we
Mm.
can actually hear ourselves, our own intuition, and our own connection to God, the universe, the divine, whatever, when we're alone in nature. And it's been shown by medical research even that being outdoors in nature is something that recharges us with energy.
Mm.
Forest bathing is a practice that's nowadays recommended by doctors.
Wow.
Go be outside in the middle of the trees, you know, singing to songbird. Songbird is another element that has been proven by scientific research to improve life satisfaction. So all these things, being in touch with the ground, with the trees, with the birds, with animals in the wild or in your local park, is something that we've become a bit alienated from through the last centuries of social development, industrial revolutions, and then, you know, getting more and more into this work hustle culture where people already struggle sometimes to spend time with their families because they have so much pressure to earn money and to achieve that, let alone that they find time to spend in nature on their own or even with the families, whatever. But this is something that should actually be our priority. Because if we become ill, whether physically ill with low energy or with mental health issues such as depression, which is so common nowadays, again, because we've been alienated from our own spirituality, from our own connection to nature, the antidote is to go back to nature, to spend time in a relaxing setting, which can be anywhere you have access to. It can be your local park, can be at the beach, can be on your own, can be with your family, whatever you can pull off, you know. And there are practices such as, for instance, grounding, which is nowadays also recommended by doctors. which is to spend time barefoot with your feet touching the ground. That's already recharging you with energy. And exercise in nature, meditate in nature. Then for the social aspect that makes us feel alone is that we have hyperabundance of social stimuli through social media, the internet. In the cities, there's people everywhere, right? But what we have a scarcity of is authentic human interaction. And authenticity is measured by how vulnerable and real we can be in the interaction. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Brené Brown, such an amazing researcher. I really admire her. And she says that what we crave the most as humans is the ability or capacity to be vulnerable with each other. So real. So, not having to fake that we're doing well or that everything is so fine and so positive in our lives, which is a bit what social media culture can do to people. But to be able to say, look, I feel like shit today. And it's good, it's part of life.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be ashamed of. And to acknowledge that we have needs and to learn how to take care of those needs, learning more efficient ways to communicate, learning to get in tune with your body and the sensations in your body, and also with your emotional intelligence. Those are skills that are really necessary, but are not taught in school. So many adults nowadays, they struggle because they never learned these skills. So there's nothing wrong with people as such. It's more of a systemic issue, right? That we need to take care of this. I don't know, providing social spaces where people can interact authentically and vulnerably, teaching emotional intelligence and facilitating that people can connect with nature.
Yeah. When you're saying, individuals creating a safe space for us to be vulnerable is important. Totally agree with that. What is your view or thoughts around individuals who are not doing so well, right? They're being open, they're being vulnerable with all the things. Do you have some steps that you could give to them? We have a ton of people watching live, by the way. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with Irene and I. And if you are watching on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay so we can send you some love. But there are people that are not in a good place right now, right? And part of what Her Nation does, and my community, this podcast, is allowing space for vulnerable conversations. But how does somebody start to step out of that? So what are a couple of things that you could recommend somebody who's maybe in a dark spot, and maybe they've been in a dark spot for a little bit of time, so much so that maybe it's kind of becoming their identity a little bit.
Yeah.
But they do see a light. They're like, you know what? I do want to do it differently. What are some things you could recommend them to do that are not scary?
Yeah. So thank you for asking that. It's really important to understand that it happens to the best of us. We all have ups and downs. There's nothing to be ashamed of. And that's the first step, right? To realize that it's not your fault. And you can look for causes, but it's not so helpful to look for culprits, right? So try to shift this mindset of naming and blaming for a mindset of causes and responsibility, right? So maybe I did some things to myself, or someone did something to me. Maybe I was a victim of abuse. Maybe there are social systemic causes to my issues right now. It's good to be aware of the causes, but try to take the blame out of it. Try to take the guilt off it. And try to find a support network, a safe space, like you were saying, like this group is already a great space where you can reach out if you feel that you need help. And sometimes just being able to state what's been happening to you is the first step to get out of the shame cycle, right? Because normally when we don't dare to say something out loud, it's because we're ashamed of it. And I say it all the time as a therapist, and I became a therapist because of my own trouble. I attempted suicide. I was chronically depressed. I was chronically anxious for many years. And I think it's important that more and more people can say this openly and realize there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There are so many fucked up things in society.
Yeah.
It's only normal that we get a little bit mentally ill now and then. So try to, relativize it, find the bright side, try to be able to say it to, maybe not in the group if you don't feel comfortable, but find someone, a therapist, a relative, a friend. So acknowledge the situation, right? If you don't want to talk to anybody, journal, write it down. You can write a letter to yourself. You can write a letter to God, but get it out of your system. And then find things on the daily that give you joy. Because as you were saying, for some people, if they're at a dark place, going all in with meditation and with deep therapy practice can be scary in the beginning.
Yeah.
So easy things you can do, and this has been proven by neuroscience to work, as well as medication for OCD patients, right? Is to pattern interrupt. Whenever you go into a negative spiral of thinking, you choose to consciously stop the negative thinking and go do an activity that you enjoy instead. And it can be anything. It can be a walk in the park. It can be baking. It can be playing your favorite song and dancing along in your living room. It can be taking a bath, walking your dog, playing with your kids, anything really. Just that pattern interrupt over time allows for neural rewire. So neurons that wire together, they fire together, they wire together. So over time, the more we practice better thoughts, better feelings, better activities, the more we become attuned to that. And we slowly leave behind us the victim mentality, the identity that we had as depressed people, as wrong people. And we've all been there. There's nothing wrong with that because we've all been victims of something at some point.
Yeah.
Right. But the point is how can we learn from that and move on? And maybe in the beginning you're not ready to forgive yet, you're not ready to learn the lesson yet. But if you want to enjoy life, you can always find small things that you can do on the daily, and also trying to develop a gratitude practice, because gratitude is the most healing emotion together with love. But if you cannot access love on its own, just counting your blessings on the daily. You can do it out loud. You can do it with your kids. If you have kids, this is a great thing to do in the morning while having breakfast, while getting them ready for the day, just counting your blessings together. However you can pull it off, just do it and acknowledge yourself, celebrate yourself for every little accomplishment, and forgive yourself for the days that you can't, because we've all been there. It's normal. We're human. We're learning.
Yeah, definitely. I love this idea of starting out having just some heart-to-heart conversations with yourself around your story of blame and victimhood.
Yeah.
I think it's a really great place to start. And I think that is something that you can do silently, even while walking or while grounding. While you were talking about that, I was kind of thinking back to my story and really remembering having real loud conversations with myself, like out loud, not like I'm yelling, but like out loud conversations with myself around my story. And why am I holding on to the story?
Yeah.
Why do I continue telling the story? What do I like about the story? What am I getting out of this story? And then really having back and forth arguments around the blame that I had with other people. And what's the benefit of keeping the blame? And what's the benefit of continuing to have a wall up? Now, granted, some walls do need to stay up, but that doesn't mean that that needs to occupy your mind, your soul, your heart. Great place to start. I definitely agree with everything that you mentioned. I love the grounding. I do want to ask regarding that. When you're saying grounding, it's on dirt, right? Not like the blacktop, right? Or
Well, ideally it would be any kind of natural soil. It can
okay.
be sand, it can be grass, it can be, any kind. That has been shown to balance our electromagnetic field as humans, because these energy things from spirituality are actually something that can be measured scientifically most of the time. And if you perform an MRI, what you're doing is measuring electromagnetic currents going through our nervous system. So our nervous system gets recharged when we touch natural surface of earth, without shoes, without any insulation. Yeah.
Okay. Um, that's interesting. Very, very cool. Well, I love this. I thank you so much for all of the goodness that you shared today. I do want to ask, we have a ton of people watching live right now. They're obviously resonating with what you're saying. First of all, who do you help? Who should be reaching out to you? I think is a good question, probably.
Yeah, so I help anybody that comes to me for help, really. A few times it's happened that someone came and I wasn't the best person, so I addressed them to another mental health professional or other types of professionals. But for me, anybody who's struggling at any level, be it physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and who's willing to have a look at themselves and empower themselves out of victimhood and into proactive action to change their lives, that's the people I can help,
Yeah.
because I advocate for this taking radical self-responsibility. Like you were saying, you were performing therapy on yourself, and your story of overcoming all the challenges that life threw at you, Sabrina, let me tell you, is so inspiring. And how you overcome that is by taking self-responsibility, taking your life in your own hands. Stop waiting for someone to come and save you. Stop waiting for doctors to come and save you, for the magic pill to make all your problems go away, for the government to subsidize you out of poverty, whatever. We all struggle at different levels, and the answer is always within us. Of course, help comes from outside of us, and sometimes challenges come as well. But the more we can connect to that inner power, which for me, again, is spirituality, is feeling that you are a force of nature. The forces of nature that are outside of you are a reflection, in a way, of your own power. And then, regardless of your personal religious beliefs, most of us, we believe there must be something, right? Some higher power. We pray in some way.
Mm.
We wish, right, there was someone out there that can help us. And that starts by learning how to help yourself. So what I do for people is really giving them the tools so that they learn to help themselves, because it's not that I can save anybody directly as a therapist either. I just empower people with tools. And again, that goes from emotional intelligence to nutrition to knowing how to ground themselves and take care of their nervous system and connect with nature, and learning better relationship skills, nonviolent communication, all that, because I have a big toolkit that I learned out of my own struggles. Had I never experienced anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts, I would have never learned all that I did. And
Yeah.
I guess for you as well, right? I don't know. Today I'm grateful for the challenges because they made me become who I am.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can relate to that, but I guess you would, right?
Yeah, same. Yeah. And I think that that's kind of when you get to that point is when you realize like you're making moves in your healing journey. You know, it takes a second to get there.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
takes
And we're
time.
all different arenas, right? I remember being at a point where I thought I would never look back and be grateful or have no regrets or forgive or, you know, but now it's, I don't want to say it's all gone because we still have triggers. I think triggers are an ongoing thing. But yeah, total gratitude, total love for the journey that I've been on, like wholeheartedly.
Yeah, yeah, likewise. And we can learn from everything, really. There's no challenge that we cannot use for our personal growth. There's no person that cannot teach us something. And I love that this is the premise of this show, right? Everybody is our teacher, even nature, even forces of nature. When we learn to quiet our mind and listen, really listen to both of the voice of our intuition, then we have all the answers. Because I believe that God is within us. God speaks to every person directly because we're all a manifestation of that energy that moves nature. And that, according to non-dualistic spiritual traditions, that are my favorite, is just loving awareness. It's pure
Mm.
love. Like Dante, the Italian poet, said, love is the force that moves the planets and stars. That's for me what it is. What's love? What's God? That's my definition of it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Irene, for being here and hanging out with us. This was absolutely delightful. For those that do want to know more, where can people find you? Where do you predominantly hang out?
So I am to be found on Facebook under my full name here, Irene Otero Fernández, and Instagram as Irene of Therapy. Every work day, pretty much. On weekends, I try to rest. I don't always manage, entrepreneurial life. But yeah, and if anything that I've said resonated, I'll be happy to discuss more, to offer you free resources. I offer a free self-love course that has a small video series and a workbook with journaling exercises, with checklists for your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. Because let's never forget that we are multidimensional beings, and our physical health is so linked to our mental and emotional health. And we all have some spiritual aspirations or concerns of ideas that should be incorporated as well into our daily routines as much as we can. Doesn't have to be with a meditation practice as such, but just the gratitude practice will work miracles for your health and well-being.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. If you resonated with Irene and all of the awesomeness that she shared today, make sure you check out her social media. She predominantly hangs out on Insta and Facebook. We love to connect people here on this platform in order to make sure that we all continue to rise. If that program that she mentioned does interest you, make sure to reach out to her in her direct messages so she can get you more information on that. This brings our this episode to an end. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our amazing guest speaker for sharing her wisdom and inspiring us all. To each and every one of you, our dedicated listeners, thank you for staying with us until the very end. Your support and engagement means the world to us. To remember to follow, like, and share. Once again, my name is Sabrina Victoria. I invite you to join our amazing community, Her Nation, where we continue to have transformative conversations just like this.